everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is the Frozone episode. Me, am in, deep snowdrifts at the moment, but St. Louis is kind of used to that. England, I assume, is still like 35 degrees and cloudy.
Warmer than that, actually. It's about 50-ish and cloudy. Yeah, it's
This is
cloudy.
like talking to Joe in Hawaii, man.
Yeah, I'm looking out the window right now, and completely solidly gray sky. It was raining earlier today, but it feels balmy after. There were a couple of days where it didn't get above freezing, which I think I talked about this on last week's episode. Absolutely the first time since I've lived here that's happened. Where like you had a day that it didn't get above freezing. My pepper plants, I think, have been cooked, as well as the neighborhood cats managed to force their way under the garden tent to start shitting in it, even when I'd sealed the fucking tent. So like a haunted kingdom of fungus emerged from all the cat shit in the fucking tent. I didn't notice this. It's just I
get it, man. I've had outdoor plants, and you just cover them, and you're just like, all right, good luck. I'll see you in a couple months. I'll come out and water you on occasion, and then you go out there. Like I had that problem with my old at my old house. One day I went out, and like there were 3 cats like living in the underneath all the pepper plants. But I just got my dog to bark at them, and they never came back. So
I'm trying to see like what exotic pet laws exist in the UK, and could see if I can, adopt an ocelot or something like that, just to keep these fuckers out of here. Because
just get a dog. Just get like literally a normal dog.
I'd like to get a dog, but we don't own our place, so there's all the permission of, whether or not the Tory landlord who owns this place will allow us to have a dog. Man, I mean, technically we're not allowed to have stuff on the walls, but I was just like, fuck it, I'm doing it anyway, and I'll just either do it myself or pay for somebody to fucking cover it up when it's all done, and they won't know the difference. You
guys can't get a dog, you can't get a gun. Like what can you do in England other than be sad and conquer other nations?
Be racist. I mean, that's sort of what the country's founded on. I mean, that's why England founded America. They needed an outlet for being racist and, making money through exploitation. So
the sun never sets on British colonialism.
Well, have you ever heard the joke about, I mean, this is an old one, but maybe our fans haven't heard it. The joke about the sun never sets on the British Empire because God doesn't trust an Englishman in the dark. Because they are perverts. I mean, I say they, even though my mom's English and I live here, so I mean, I'm sort of English by extraction, but British I can deal with. Being a British citizen I can deal with, but being identified as English...
If there's one thing we all learned from watching Clockwork Orange, it's that the British people are all psychopathic and need to be kept on Hell Island away from everybody else.
Yeah, I was thinking about, it's funny, the more you learn about the politics of literally every English-speaking country, the more you realize that they're all cursed by having been founded in some capacity by the English. I mean, obviously some have fared better than others.
America is doing a empire speed run, basically. Like, everybody else took like their time. 100 years. Let's go fight the Germans for 150 years or whatever. And then, nothing will really come of it. And America's just like, nope, we're going to manifest destiny our way across here. If we can't stab them, we're going to cough on them. And now it's all ours.
Yeah. I mean, out of curiosity, I read some stuff about Australian politics, and it's basically the same. I realized that I always used to joke about how, in my opinion, for the month I spent in Australia, the vibe that I got was that it was like British California. But the more I think about it, the more I feel like Australia is both... Well, actually, it's not a geographical midway point, but it might as well be a geographical midway point between America and apartheid South Africa. It's got a lot of both. And apparently, according to people that I know who live in Western Australia, if you go to the city of Perth, like 10% of the population are Afrikaners. So, yeah, wild
They're
country.
What?
Afrikaners. Afrikaans-speaking South African white people. So people of primarily Dutch extraction. And God, the Dutch. Whew, man. Rough one right there.
Yeah, it's really hard whenever like you I'm obviously not going to leave this city, let alone the fucking country, but you start looking, it's like, I wonder what the politics of like, a place like Sweden is like. And on the front, it's just like, we're nice. We have high taxes, but everything is, nice. And then you spend like 20 minutes to like. So anyway, that's the third time we did a genocide.
Yes. Oh yes, we're going to kidnap the immigrant babies and we're going to make them eat liver paste because that's what they do in Sweden. Yeah, it's oosh, yeah. Ugh. I mean, the thing about it is America's fucked, but I think that we fall victim to narratives of, the idea that, well, they do this XYZ thing better in other countries, so, why can't we just have that system? And I mean, I agree in the sense that there's nothing stopping America from having, like, we certainly have the resources and the ability to have the things that, to have, I don't know, physical infrastructure like they have in a place like Japan or Switzerland, or the healthcare provisions you have in a country like Denmark. You could have those things. But one thing that I do think is very important to bear in mind is that in the past, when offered these things, American voters, through the awfulness of the American electoral system, have basically rejected them if they had to share them with people who aren't the same race. And I know a lot of people will try to be like, well, that means we can never do it. That means we can never try. And I reject that completely. But I do think that it's worth bearing in mind that if you don't engage with that, you're setting yourself up for the same results as the campaigners who fought for things like, unsuccessfully for things like fully socialized medicine or government provided health care or health insurance, post World War II, for example. Cynthia and I were talking about this not that long ago, that when you look at the consequences of the sort of post-war social democracy in countries around the world, and you look at stuff like the New Deal, so much of the New Deal had to be, cobbled together in this just like Winchester mansion of policy to make sure that in one way or another it excluded black people. And that's the legacy we're dealing with to this day. And I argue that America hasn't really been a functional society in any capacity in terms of like its government and the general political tendencies being stable and not being self-sabotaging since the passage of the Civil Rights Act. And I don't think that's coincidental. I think that the fact is America was founded to be an apartheid state, a slave autocracy, and until we dismantle all of the things that were part and parcel of that system, we're going to be faced with, the same situation continually repeating itself. And to transition from dad chat to a topical discussion, I noticed the same phenomenon in terms of call it disinformation, aggressive disinformation, and white grievance scaremongering, if you will, with regard to what's happening in Texas right now. So for those of you who are not aware of this, as Francis was just describing the weather, it's even worse or perhaps the same, but down south they're not accustomed to these kinds of conditions. And so snow, freezing rain, ice, temperatures in the teens and below. Friend of mine in Austin said that it got down to 9 degrees one night, which is just, I remember it getting down to 15 degrees one night in Columbus, Georgia, but that didn't last very long. This has basically been an ongoing cold snap and snowstorm and ice storm and such. And particularly Texas is vulnerable because of their hilarious grid system, which from what I can tell is completely independent of the grid systems of other states. And in the U.S., you have two major grid systems for basically the eastern half and the western half of the country. Texas is independent of this, so it can't, as I understand it, it cannot purchase or import power from other states. As I understand this, they did this intentionally to avoid EPA provisions, which is hilarious and very, very Texan.
It's fucking... And what's great, too, is that the eastern and western power grids fully include Canada too. It's not just like, and then it ends at the Canadian border. It extends well into Canada. Like there's plenty of power sharing going on with us in Canada because hey, Canada's got a whole lot of open plain that one day maybe they can slap a bunch of wind turbines or something up there. You know, we have something. There's a way, there's a collective way to deal with these things. And certainly the infrastructure on those two, you know, by themselves. Shit, PG&E burned down, you know, a good chunk of California with their fucked up 90-year-old knob and tube wiring ass systems that they had going on. So certainly not going to sit here and be like, oh, well, I mean, it's a perfect system outside of Texas, because obviously it's not, because, you know, it's run for profit, which as soon as anything is run for profit, as soon as a good becomes a commodity, then it becomes something that you can cheap out on and you don't care about. Which, I mean, to be fair, the government does that too about things that aren't necessarily money makers. But at least the government shit works sometimes. I don't know.
I don't know what it is in California because I know that it's been. I don't know if the state controls it, but I know that it's not like a state-run enterprise in the sense of it being like it is a private company, or it is an outsourced kind of thing, like without getting too into a subject that I don't know a ton about. Obviously, Texas is completely different. And I think the thing that really, I first became aware of the right-wing narrative around this because very sad sort of personal thing, I suppose. What I would describe as one of my favorite soldiers from when I ran this outpost in Afghanistan, who I thought came away from the experience not bitter and not hateful and not racist towards Afghans and not cynical, like genuinely a really kind person, someone like I really respected and I hoped for good things, has become very, very right-wing internet radicalized shitlord. And he was sharing memes that basically implied that Texas's whole, frigid death that's happening right now is solely because the libs forced Texas to build wind turbines, but the wind turbines froze, and so as a result, nobody has power.
These people are acting as if like wind turbines don't exist outside of Texas. I got fucking wind turbines outside of Chicago up here. Guess what? It snows all the time, you dipshits. They have them in Antarctica.
Texas's power grid, as I understand it, has about 5% of its capacity from wind turbines. The other 95% is from coal, natural gas, and nuclear power. Now, the problem is not that wind turbines froze, because yes, they froze, they can be de-iced, but they're not even that big of the mix. The problem is the grid system itself hasn't been weatherized to handle this stuff, and tons of buildings aren't built with their insulation to handle this kind of weather. And a lot, I believe, in some cases, a majority, or at least in some jurisdictions, a majority of places use electric heating. So you have a situation in which they knew this was going to happen because there was a huge blackout in Texas after the Super Bowl, I think in the 80s. There was a huge blackout 10 years ago. And the recommendations from 10 years ago were, you've got to winterize this shit, like when you need it in an emergency. That can't be the moment that you discover that it's failing. And that obviously hasn't happened because it's Texas and, infrastructure spending is gay communism. And as a result, let me correct that. Infrastructure spending that's not freeways and airports is gay communism. Everything, as long as it burns fossil fuels or it facilitates the burning of fossil fuels, they're fine with it. And this has, of course, now created a situation where, as I understand it, something like there were reports that in Harris County, which is Houston, I believe, there were like at least 20 people found dead already from hypothermia, from freezing to death. I'm sure there's going to be more than that. And, you've got people 3-4 days now don't have power, but wealthy parts of Texas's cities and like the downtown chorus do have power. Now, maybe that's private generators. I doubt it for the homes. For commercial buildings, maybe. But the thing is, the grid is failing. It's failing regular people. They can't import power. They can't generate power because their generation systems can't handle operating in this weather. So basically, if the substations and local power nodes continue transmitting power, basically, then they could permanently damage the system. So they've had to shut it down. So my friend has one outlet in his house that works because of something with the wiring. He doesn't know why. And the neighborhood he lives in is relatively close to a fire station. So maybe that's why they didn't completely lose power. But he's huddled up in his room with a space heater, having put styrofoam over the windows, trying to insulate somewhat. And it's the one room in the house that's above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. People that I know who live there, another guy who I think is a fan of Hell of a Way, I saw his tweets. He was charging his phone in his car. His house has been without power. He has, I believe, a child under the age of 3. They're all sleeping in one bed, just covered in blankets because their house has no heat whatsoever. It came on for a while, then went off again. So now, the temperature in the house was getting below 45 degrees.
Yeah, and then you have
unbelievable. And the governor of Texas goes on Fox News and is like, This is because of energy of clean energy and wind power. The Green New Deal will do this to everywhere in America. And it's like, motherfucker, crash your car into a tree a second time and just fucking die already.
Did you see the Texas mayor of Colorado City who had to resign after a big long Facebook screed about how the government isn't here to help you, and if you die during the freezing temperatures, and it's your own fault, and that the weak have to die for the strong to survive. Literally, a man who is elected to a post in government is just like, nope, I'm not going to do anything for you. Which, I appreciate that dedication to being a shitheaded Republican, but also your people are dying, and it's not taken too kindly to blame that on themselves rather than you, who could have actually done something about it.
I want to read this because I would like to read this out as Marine Todd. I feel like this is such a Marine Todd energy, and I don't know, Francis. Maybe that's unfair to Marine Todd, but I do think that that's the only way you can do this sort of just having heat during a blizzard is socialism kind of mentality.
It's right. So, Nate, what has happened? What has happened to us? As just a normal fucking it's. I don't know. We're gonna get more into it, I'm sure, but the idea that everything is just to own the libs, man. And even Dan Crenshaw wrote some long fucking thing about how his policies aren't actually to own the libs, when everything the man's done has ever been to own the libs. That's all any of this is. Demonstrable facts. And not even Republicans, man. I'm watching Biden tell kids that, kids don't get the COVID. They don't get COVID, and the chance of them passing it on to their parents isn't all that big, so it's okay if they reopen schools. Literally all these things are incorrect. They're lies. They are lies. They're lies. And that's fine. You're lying. But stop lying to such a point where you're fucking killing people.
And that's the thing, right? With Dan Patrick lying about wind turbines and all the other right-wing chuds doing the same thing. It's absolutely a lie, but all of your meemaws are going to believe that shit because that's the way the sort of information economy with right-wing disinformation works. But I want to read, let Marine Todd read Tim Boyd's Facebook post. Now, this is the mayor of a city. So this is a guy who got elected and gets paid, and and his citizens pay taxes in some way or form to support services from the city. And this is what their mayor thinks of their desire to not freeze to death. Let me hurt some feelings while I have a minute. No one owes you or your family anything, nor is it the local government's responsibility to support you during trying times like this. Sink or swim, it's your choice. The city and county, along with power providers or any other services, owes you nothing. I'm sick and tired of people looking for a damn handout. If you don't have electricity, you step up and come up with a game plan to keep your family warm and safe. If you have no water, you deal without and think outside the box to survive and supply some to your family. If you're sitting at home in the cold because you have no power or sitting there waiting for someone to come rescue you because you're lazy I can't even, it's very badly written. Because you're lazy is the direct result of your raising. Only the folks will survive. Only the strong will survive and the weak will perish. Folks, God has given us the tools to support ourselves in times like this. This is sadly a product of a socialist government where they feed people to believe that the few will work and the others will become dependent for handouts. Well, I'm sorry you've been dealing without electricity and water. Yes, I'll be damned if I'm going to provide for anyone that is capable of doing it for themselves. We have lost sight of those in need and those that take advantage of the system and mesh them into one group. Bottom line, quit crying and looking for a handout. Get off your ass and take care of your own family. Bottom line, don't be a part of the problem, be a part of the solution.
I would love it if somebody was part of the solution by fucking splitting him open like a tauntaun and crawling into his body for heat. Like, can you imagine? Like, I just like there is, you know, when you talk about justifiable homicide, like if a mob of people from Colorado City decided to keep themselves warm by putting him on a burning pile of pallets, like, I really don't think anybody, like, I don't blame. Did you read what he posted on Facebook? Fuck that guy. Like, they did. He told them to do what they needed to do. God has given them the tools, and it turns out those tools were a lot of lighter fluid and a shitty mayor with a bad goatee.
Well, what's crazy too, it's like, okay, well, what should these people do? I mean, power doesn't work. Should they get in their cars? Roads are iced, can't drive. Gas stations are out of gas. What are you gonna do? What are you actually gonna do?
It's what it is it's just pushing off the blame. It's, I'm not to blame, you're to blame. It's I can't do anything. Look, politicians. 90% of being a politician is platitudes anyway. It's just going out there and we love our troops and we love kissing babies and it's so sad out here for people. And then you just say the nice things and everybody forgets that you're actually a shithead and not actually going to do anything about it. This guy went like full on Marine Todd gets elected somehow. Like, this is if like you got a UFC fighter and you elected him to a board somewhere like they did in Long Beach, and now he's just an insane person that nobody can get rid of. Like, this is where electoral politics gets you, is crazy people. And yeah, like this entire Facebook yelling is people have been telling him, what are we going to do? What can we do? And instead of coming up with a solution, he decides to go full on libertarian fascist and say, if you die, it's your own fault. It's not my fault. Like, what the fuck's the point of you then? Like, there literally is no point in a government if this is how it's going to work, and that's fine. Just disband the government, and then let people collectively figure it out. Because like, if you take away this like shitty group of people above you, right? Like, if you somehow manage to coup them or just get them all to resign or get rid of them, and then you just have a bunch of people with no elected officials, they eventually will get together and figure it the fuck out, just like we always do. So we don't actually need this guy. We don't need a lot of these people.
But I mean, I think the thing about it is too is like, I think the transition period you're describing would be horrendous. So I don't necessarily think.
No, I'm not talking about it on the scale of America. I'm just talking about Colorado City needs to do a coup on their mayor.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is more like people don't have any options here.
Yeah.
Like, if you live in a home and all of the heat is electric, how are you supposed to fend for yourself in the pioneer hardscrabble way? What are you actually supposed to do? Like, if the roads are frozen, you can't drive. What if you're disabled and can't drive? What if you don't own a car? What if you are too old to drive? What if you're currently injured? What if you're permanently disabled? What if you don't have the mobility to get out? What do? Do you go to fucking Burger King? Well, what if they don't have power and you can't get on the roads? You know what I mean? Like, what if you don't have water? There's no water running. You can't go down to the store. What if the stores aren't open? What if they don't have any water? Like, all this idea, like, you just didn't fucking plan ahead, Ranger. It's like, yeah, right. The whole point of living in a fucking civilized society is that you are supposed to plan for shit. That's why we pay you money. That's why you are the boss. And the idea that whenever this kind of thing happens, the victims are to blame, or some boogeyman is to blame. I feel like, okay, we are a veteran socialist podcast, but like, I feel as though this mentality is something that I encountered it in the military and I've encountered it in civilian life. And what it ultimately comes down to is it seems like the concept to them of being in government is just to yell on Facebook and to, make money on backroom deals, but not actually provide any services. And I mean, I appreciate that this guy apparently claims that he had already quit when he made that post, but he certainly has quit now. But the idea that that's all you can get from your elected representatives, like, I mean, he did make a statement after the outcry, and this is, I'll try to read in contrite Marine Todd voice. I have sat back and watched all this escalating, and I have tried to keep my mouth shut. I won't deny for 1 minute what I said in this post this morning. Believe me when I say that many of the things I said were taken out of context, and some of which were said without putting much thought into it. I would never want to hurt the elderly or anyone that is in true need of help to be left to fend for themselves. I was only trying to make the statement that these folks that are too lazy to get up and fend for themselves but are capable should not be dealt a handout. I apologize for the wording, some of the phrases that were used. I'd already turned in my resignation and had not signed up to run for mayor again on the deadline. That was February 12th. I spoke to some of this out of anger the city and county was catching for situations which were out of their control. Please understand, if I had to do it over again, I would have just kept my words to myself, and if I did say them, I would have used better wording and been more descriptive.
There's no apology here. This is just, I'm sorry you're offended by what I said, which is a Republican apology.
The remaining 3 paragraphs are basically him saying, stop being mean to me and my family. He signs it. Thank you, Tim Boyd, parentheses, citizen.
Sovereign. Citizen, sovereign.
Well, he's not mayor anymore. He's just a citizen now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
He's no longer sucking off of the teat of the government taxpayers, I guess. Good. Fucking hopefully he goes off into the Texas wilderness and fucking freezes to death.
I mean, but it's amazing. It's amazing, though, because like the people who posted some of the comments from the initial post on Twitter, for example, one of the replies to this is a guy named Dean A. Schmidt, whose avatar is him in a car with sunglasses, wearing a cowboy hat. And his display name is his name plus an American flag. He says, and that's why they are dependent on government. What he's saying is get out and take care of yourself. That's how this country used to work.
No, it didn't.
But
it really
didn't.
Fucking.
I mean, yes, all right. Perhaps in the olden days when your great grandpappy would have gone out and cut firewood, but like if you live in a city in a building without a fireplace, how in the fuck are you going to cut firewood? What are you going to do it for? Like, what are you actually going to do?
Yeah, if you don't follow Twitter user Neolithic Sheep, you should. They are a Navy vet who is living mostly off of the grid. And they came up. They get like, hey, here's you got a yurt out in the middle of a wooded area, but also wood burning stoves and gaslighting and all this stuff. And to listen to Shepard talk about how they live like this, it's like, man, this sounds like it's a cool, interesting experiment. And they have a backup plan if things don't go great. They've got somewhere else that they can go. They've got friends that check in on them and everything. But like, it sounds like it fucking sucks. Like, you have to really want to do that. Like, it sounds like it's a cool experiment for some people to do if they really want to like learn to live off of the grid and do all these cool things. And like, I don't want to take away from anybody's experience and learning the things that they want to learn. However, my ass doesn't want to do that. I don't want a wood-burning stove in my house. I want to have a thing. I flip the switch and it comes on. And if the power goes out within, 24, 36 hours or so, I have power again. Like, that's the whole point of this. That's the point. Nate, we live in a fucking society, damn it. What?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have a wood-burning stove that I can use when I want to make a fire, but then when I don't want to make a fire to heat my home, I have, radiators. And ultimately, even if I wanted to heat my home with the old Victorian fireplaces in this home, I can't. Can you guess why, Francis?
What's that?
Because they've been fucking blocked because they're decorative. Because nobody burns, like, it's far, and for another, even if I wanted to use them, they're probably too shallow for a real wood fire because they were meant for coal in the Victorian era.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I've got those. Or not my old house, my old Victorian house had, in the bedroom was a coal burning fireplace. Look, like, yeah, maybe I could, have that repaired and I could one day find hunks of coal somewhere and chuck it in there and burn them. And then, like, die of carbon monoxide poisoning, as, was a thing that would happen sometimes because you really shouldn't burn coal inside of your house. There's a reason when you buy, like, a grill, it says, put your grill outside, not inside, you dummy. because you're gonna fucking die that way. Like and also it just doesn't like. Our history is rife with stuff like this in America. Like in the 1800s, when there was all this when we were manifesting our destiny, we're sod busting our way across Kansas and Colorado and all these other places. There was like years of locust swarms and grasshopper swarms that completely destroyed crops. Like people were just like completely living in destitution. Destitution in 1870s. In a sod house on the Kansas plains means you just like you're eating dirt or you die of starvation. Like those are your options. Hopefully, you can sell your children to make a couple of extra bucks. Maybe like that's the world that you live in there. But at the time, politicians are like, oh well, we're praying for you. Like back then, it was we'll pray for you, but we're not actually going to do anything for government assistance. Eventually, they started giving away free seed and everything. But it really goes to show that like. There is in our history, in the American history, that the go fuck yourself attitude of politicians towards like anybody who might say shit, everything went tits up on me and I need some help. Can you guys help me? It's like, no, that's not what we do. Like we just get elected to make laws so that you can help yourself more. It's like cool, but also I'm dying. So can we do something where I don't die? And unfortunately, in a capitalist society, you're really just kind of a number. And unless you're generating some sort of income or some sort of profit margin for somebody, you're really just kind of like, well, I mean, they're not creating anything now that I need, so who gives a fuck if they die? That's just what we have on a grander scale.
There's been this back and forth here in the UK about how can the Tories get away with this utter catastrophe with regard to COVID that's led to, 125,000 people dying, and yet their poll numbers haven't budged at all. Like, not at all. And I think, on one hand, property prices have continued to rise, and so that's the Tories' vote right there. Buy-to-let landlords. So basically people who buy homes with the intention of renting them. Like, that, as long as property values go up and those people's portfolios are worth more and more every year, like the Tories get 40% of the population. This is like a country buy-in for landlords. But another point I would make is that the austerity cuts to social services since 2010 have, in the estimation of a number of different research organizations, killed around the same number of disabled people. You've had, easily over 100,000 people die prematurely, in cases where you'll hear stories of people being found fit to work when literally like they can't walk without having a seizure. People getting their benefits cut because they say that they're actually fit to work and then they starve to death because they literally can't leave their homes. Like just the sheer cruelty they've been. Put it this way, if you get your benefits cut or you get your application denied, if you appeal and take it to a tribunal, something like 90% or 95% of decisions are overturned on appeal. But not everybody has the time or money to do that. And so they wind up just assuming that because they can, most people won't have the resources or, the understanding of the system to be able to appeal, they'll just fuck them and they can just die quietly or do what they want them to do. And that level of just, more money for us, fuck you, is sort of in harmony with the Republican Party. But I think what's different in this situation is Republicans and conservatives, more generally, are the whiniest people on the planet. And we've been told over and over again that all you need is this free market capitalist utopia and everything will be great. And then you look at Texas, who are like, we don't want to meet American emissions laws. That's gay communism. We're going to have our own grid. Here's a 5% wind farms as a fig leaf, but fuck you. We're going to burn natural gas and beautiful clean coal. And what happens? This huge disaster. And not only can they not face up and be like, hey, we're doing the best we can, we're going to fix it, this is unprecedented, which is what a normal shithead right-wing government would do. They're like, no, the libs made us only burn, the libs made us abandon natural gas and only use wind farms, and the wind farms all froze because King Neptune fucking breathed on them. So you can't have power because it's the libs' fault. Like, they have to lie to such an amazing degree because they're such fucking whiners that that's the only way they can operate. And much like the Tories and their voter share, the Republican voters will never punish them for this because, the whole, the kind of QAnon derangement syndrome, like even if you aren't fully Q-pilled, like that alternate reality, that is the truth of everyone in America who votes Republican, unless they are so balls rich that their only point in voting Republican is, I don't want to pay taxes.
Yeah,
And half of those people are probably also basically Q-pilled too.
I just long for a politician to say, yeah, we fucked up, but we're fixing it. Here's what we're going to do to fix it. Like, it always comes down to blaming somebody else. It's not our fault. It's the wind turbines, or it's not our fault. It's the people before us didn't give us a good enough plan to do these things. Like, there's always a blame game, a finger that needs to be pointed, because rather than fix the problem, it's a lot easier to just say it's their fault that it's all fucked up, and we're not actually going to do anything to make it unfucked, because we're just going to say that it's fucked up because of those people. Like, all politics now has become is just, how do we own the other side? Whether you've got Dan Crenshaw saying this is what the Green New Deal will get you is a bunch of busted wind turbines, even though wind turbines have been in use for fucking decades at this point. Or you've got
the UK has more wind turbines and more wind turbine power than anywhere else on Earth, and like, we also have winter storms in the North Atlantic. It gets fucking cold, and guess what? Like, we haven't had the same problem with power cuts.
Right, and
I don't know why. Maybe it's because there's a pretty big mix. Maybe it's because they have mothballed capacity and other things they can turn on if they need to. Maybe it's because the weather hasn't been so extreme that like the winterization problems would be as manifest as they are in Texas right now. Maybe it's because they have an import cable from Europe. They can import power if they need to. I don't know. What I do know is, like, what's happening in Texas is a fucking catastrophe, and to me is indicative of the sort of own the libs, libertarian bullshit in general. And I am not surprised to see American news outlets going like, "Whoa, do they have a point about wind turbines?" Like, it's grim, but this is how these people are, man. They are huge, whiny babies, and nothing is ever their fault.
I do feel, though, that things like slowly, ploddingly progress forward. At least like they're talking, car companies are talking about doing all, getting rid of combustion engines completely in the next like decade. Even the military is talking about like, oh, we need to plug in our tanks rather than fill it full of fucking rocket fuel, and because it's destroying everything when we do shit like that. So I hold out hope that at some point in time, like below all the whiners, because your whining part is like the top 10%, and then you've got like these 90% of people who are actually like doing things and trying things. And for as much as the Dan Crenshaw posts that you see on Twitter, like, Twitter's not real. So in the real world in Texas, I'm sure that despite what's his name, Abbott fucking going around and on Hannity blaming wind turbines, there's still plenty of people who are like, yeah, but we're still building a shitload of wind turbines because really that's going to be the smartest thing going forward. Like, like I said, it always seems like there's these really loud shitheads, but underneath all of it, things are getting better. And then 10 years from now, we'll just be like, Dan who? What the fuck was that guy talking about? The fucking one-eyed Willie over here who constantly braid on about how he hates identity politics, yet participated in identity politics every day of his life. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that gets me about it is just, at some point, I would like there to be a reckoning for how these decisions have destroyed the lives of so many people, and in many cases gotten lots of people killed. And I think about, the way that the US government has handled COVID and basically decided that COVID isn't real and just damn the torpedoes, we're just going to fucking get herd immunity, even though there have been places around the world that have tried that, and not only has it failed, but in most cases the virus has then mutated and made things way worse. I look at stuff like Hurricane Katrina or the Iraq War, and you see that there isn't a reckoning, because ultimately the people who are making those decisions are never going to face consequences from the only people who could actually hold them to account, who are their friends, even if they're in the opposite party. And I'm not trying to be completely pessimistic about this. You see this over and over again, and this isn't necessarily to make fun of red states, because that's the thing, right? I hate it. hate it when people try to be like, oh, this is what happens when you vote for Republicans. It's like Texas has some of the most incredibly repressive voter suppression laws, etc., on the books. They make it incredibly hard to vote. You know, like Texas is trending towards Democrats, but like they try to make it impossible to vote. In Texas, if you have a gun license, you can use it as voter ID, but you can't use a student ID from a university. Like that should tell you about how Texas is fucking I mean, Dan Crenshaw's
Look at these dumbasses.
district.
They got to get gun licenses. Move to Missouri, bitch.
Yeah, move to Alaska. You can buy guns without a license and ammo on the same day. Or at least you used to be able to. I don't know if you can now.
You can't now because ammo is just out of stock everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. Because actually you can eat ammunition if you run out of food. The thing that gets me is that I don't really see consequences on the horizon because this happens and then Democrats invariably will take over and then they'll be like, well, we have to look forward, not backward. We need to come together. And it's like, bro, these people want to murder you. The only way you could come together in America to meet halfway with Republicans is if you offered yourself up to be fucking guillotined by their insane Q mob. Like, understand your operational environment. That's the thing. And so when I see this stuff happening, I feel like maybe it's cathartic on our part to want to kind of vent about it and to be like, wow, that's fucked up. But I think the big takeaway here is that you can't expect even the physical manifestation of consequences like what you're seeing in Texas to ever convince the chuds that they were wrong, because they will never admit that they're wrong. It's always someone else to blame, their enemy who is incredibly strong but simultaneously incredibly weak, etc., etc. They will always blame it that way. All you can really hope is that enough people who are on the fence or who are not particularly political get politicized by this. And more importantly, and this is a thing that I've been doing here in the UK with one of the local groups, is just find ways you can help the people who are actually in need, who are suffering, to try to like help get them through what's going on right now until, you know, it's safe to it's safe to kind of pick up the pieces. And, you know, I'm stunned by this, but
all the righteous indignation on Twitter is fun, but it's useless. You know, I'm starting to really feel that, just like, man, Twitter's just really a negative place. And I certainly don't want to give up Twitter because that's where all my friends are. But also, you know, you start to kind of realize, like Nate, you and I have been saying forever, like, you know, it's, you can be mad at things on a federal level, but you should really be looking at things on a local level. You know, make sure that your neighbors are taken care of. Make sure that everybody around you is taken care of. We kind of do that on my block. We got one guy who goes and you know, just shovels sidewalks all over the place. Just takes care of people. And that's, you know, that guy's a better fucking socialist than most people I know. Probably better than me. So what the fuck do I know? You know, take these opportunities to look out for the people to your left and your right, as we do in the army, except without having to do war crimes.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would say is I don't want to go so far as to say that in the army, if you fucked something up this bad, you would suffer consequences. It really depends on how highly ranked you are. If you were at the point of being in charge of an organization the size of the city of Houston, you are already so senior that you probably won't really face any consequences. But if you were in charge of, or you were the senior NCO of an organization, you know, smaller in scale, you might. When you see this many people suffering, you know, from preventable problems, yeah, you might get held to task, or you might not. That's the thing. I'm very wary of people who will turn around and say, oh, well, when I was in the army, we would never have tolerated this, because, I mean, that's really not true. You probably would have enforced a rule that basically was like, yep, zero tolerance for X problem, that would have just stopped people from coming forward when they suffered the problem, you know? And so I don't ever want to lean on that, just as I'm very wary of politicians who are veterans, or aspiring politicians who are veterans, uncritically repeating stuff and saying like, well, you know, X, Y, and Z, we did this in the military, we should do this in America, because then you wind up with situations like the Arizona Democratic Representative Ruben Gallegos saying, well, I actually, those are zip ties that guy was using when he was in the Capitol building. I know because I put zip ties on detainees in Iraq. And it's like,
the weapons of war should never be carried on American streets, bitch.
I look at that and I'm like, surely there is a better way of explaining that doesn't basically say, oh yeah, those things are great when I'm randomly slapping them on Iraqi detainees who have zero fucking relevance to this illegal war that I'm prosecuting.
There's definitely a tone deafness there, and there's definitely a, and we make fun of it. I think Mayor Pete did it. A lot of people have done it. A lot of people have done here's a picture of me walking like next to some Iraqi children with a high-powered rifle, and
I mean, fuck, man, I've done it. I might as well fucking admit that. 5 years ago, I was more like, hey man, these guns are meant to be used in a war zone. But the thing that gets me about it is more, it's all right to admit that you were fucking a little more of a lib before and learn from that. But seeing this constantly and seeing the powerlessness and the impotence of the response to the Republicans doing this over and over again, it doesn't really make me super hopeful for significant change on a larger scale. I do believe that some change is going to be possible and is inevitable, but it's going to come down to people locally taking care of each other and pushing back against this shit, because I don't know, it's not gonna happen on its own. And a lot of like, I don't want to tell anybody what you have to do, because obviously it's not your job to do most of these things. But I have noticed that, like, if you can get face to face with some of these people and like talk to them like a human being, because it's easy to other somebody online. I do it all the time on purpose. Like, Dan Crenshaw, I don't see him as a normal human being. He's just a person who posts dumb things and then I make fun of him for it, and then we all go about our day. So it's, but if you get like face to face with some of these people who think Dan Crenshaw is correct, and you can sit them down and give them a little bit of fact, sometimes you can crack the armor a little bit. Not all the time. But now that Trump's gone and off the internet and no longer whipping people into a frenzy, there's like this power vacuum of person to say crazy things. Like, Q's pretty much gone. Trump's off the internet, but he's trying to do some weird thing that nobody's really following. And who do you have left? Ben Shapiro, which we all already make fun of. You've got Posebek, who is like an obvious fascist, and we all make fun of. Like, there's a power vacuum here. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that all of these things mean that going forward, we can, I don't know, get back to some sort of forward progress until 2024, when Trump runs and wins again. I mean, to be honest with you, it is funny how all of these luminaries who thought they were so ascendant in 2016 and 2017 are coming to realize that they have zero charisma and that they're basically just like simpering worms, and that Trump was the thing holding it all together.
Yeah.
So who knows, man?
Josh Hawley would not be able to exist without Trump, and he doesn't. Like, he played his hands and he got fucked up. And Hawley will probably be elected senator multiple times in Missouri. We're probably not going to get rid of him, but I will say that Hawley, at least his chances for a presidential run have been dashed at least for a good like 10 or 15 years. Now, if we all backslide even further into a big fascist state somehow, if some other Trump manages to come up, we might get fucked. But I don't know. I feel like Trump was kind of a 1 in a million, and thank God for it. But we'll see. Maybe in 2 years we're like, oh nope, actually it's all worse now.
Who knows, man? But you know what? I feel as though the big takeaway here is that I have nothing but solidarity with the people of Texas who are suffering under this right now. I woke up thinking about this morning. Like, it's just, I am so grateful to believe that something better is possible, but also I understand that just because you have that belief, it doesn't mean that the current reality isn't fucking shit for a lot of people. And I just hope people are able to take care of each other until the storm is over with, and that this does propel some change. But in the meantime, man, it just feels like a fucking frozen charnel house, and I'm really, really, really horrified at it. So it's not really the most positive of episodes. However, you and Shocks and Joe did a Zoo Crew episode for the bonus where you talked about the Insane Clown Posse. So
I
feel
want to
like now
say
would-
we talked about the Insane Clown Posse for only the last 20 minutes. There's still a good hour of content where we're not talking about it. So I don't know if where that lands you on how much you want to listen to a bonus episode, but at least we have that.
right on. Anyway, so please take a listen.
In 2017, actor Matt Damon shed light on why the businessman has racked up so many cameos. It's reportedly a clause for all movies that are shot on the premises of Trump Towers. So if you're going to shoot anything on Trump Towers, on Trump property, you have to let Donald Trump be in your movie.
That's like you have to let my son play on the football team because I'm the coach.
I mean, and here's the thing though, Trump is exactly the type of rich person that I expect rich people to be. He's completely oblivious. He has no idea what's going on. He's dumber than shit and just, lucked into a whole lot of stuff. He's an obvious criminal. He's completely corrupt. Like, that's what I expect out of my rich people. Just don't fucking become president. Like, I don't want them. I don't understand why any rich person ever becomes a political person, because then, that invites a whole lot of layers of scrutiny on you but I mean, not for Trump, because, fucking everything runs off him like water off a duck's ass. But
That's just mean to ducks.
If I had Horton Towers somewhere, yes. If you want to shoot on my premises, I got to be in your dumbass movie somehow.
Well, it's like a lot of people pointed out when he wanted to run for president the first time, like was it the Progressive Party or some? It was a fake run, and he pulled out before he was under any real scrutiny. Is because there's a reason why real estate developers generally don't run for high office, because you have to do crimes.
Yeah, you have
to. It's the name of the fucking game.
You have to be a slumlord, and there's so many like stories about what a huge fucking crook Trump was, and how he would stiff people, and how his lawyers would be like, "Yeah, we'll tie you up in litigation. You'll spend more money on legal fees than you would, just taking the loss. So you might as well take the loss." We know these things happened, but I mean, we love racism in America too much. So we love racism more than we love, taking care of.
Well, and so I guess on that final point, I have to point out the other. There was that New York Times article that came out. Was it yesterday, like the day before, about the gigantic fucking tower in New York that turned out was made of mostly like particle board and like spit.
Hell
and,
yeah.
And it was just like, I guess it's like one of the taller ones. It was built, I don't know, somewhere near fucking Central Park or some bullshit. And all these rich people bought like, I don't know, like tens of millions of dollars like of condos in this like, big fucking dick in the sky. And it turns out the whole thing just like sways wildly, has no real like audio insulation whatsoever, so like it just creaks every time there's like even the slightest fucking wind, and like and all of them are just like, oh, I don't know, it's weird, I don't understand, and it's very clear that the whole tower was just built entirely just to launder money. Like it's just like built so like MBS can just like go and like plow half of the Saudi wealth fund into buying condos in New York, just to, in case he's ever deposed, he can just, like immediately rely on that for wealth, and it has no other value. And I think that's great. I think it's really good that like that's just the way that we've decided to like base our economy, is not only just a treat-based economy to the extent where we're, getting rid of like every business that is in Amazon, but also that it's just built around like whatever like, is able to help rich people move their money around the easiest.
Look, eventually we're going to just go forward to an economy that's based on putting half of the population into grinders to feed to the other half of the population.
Yeah, the Democrats have compromised with the Republicans and decided that it's actually going to be a coal burning plant that burns the pores for energy.
But it's fine because it's going to be a cross section of society that we're burning for energy. So it's going to be, it's going to be single mothers. It's going to be non-white. It's going to be, folks of different backgrounds and everything. And we're really going to make sure that it's a good cross section of people that we grind under the wheels in order to make sure that, everything keeps running.
Fellas, I think we should make the cutoff at about, 50,000 a year into the grinder? Sounds good.
Well, we're way overdue with this COVID thing.
Well, I mean,
I volunteer to go first.
Oh, fuck, right.
Well, everybody, that's about an hour talking about some Twitter nonsense. That's fun. Next time, I'll actually have some I'll bookmark some stuff that we can talk about, because fuck it, every other podcast just talks about Twitter drama. Why shouldn't we on occasion too?
I make sure not to on mine.
I mean, you know,
That's
we
why
spent
yours
like a
is
solid
doing so
hour.
much better than mine, I guess. Listen to my podcast, and it's just me and Nate bitching about the army, and then you turn over to Joe, and Joe's like, "So anyway, that's the third time the Nazi was stabbed in the eye." It's like, well, shit. Joe's doing some fun
try to
history
cover
over
as
there.
I try to cover as many Nazis dying as possible without just becoming the Dead Nazi podcast.
I mean,
you probably do better, honestly, if it was the Dead Nazi podcast.
we could.
No, then
Look.
someone would ask me, "What about the dead communists?"
There's 20 million of them. What the fuck do you want? Yeah, they were mostly rad, I guess. We could do that. That can be our offshoot. You know, Street Fight's been doing the POD cast. We can do the Dead Nazi podcast, where all we do is talk about different ways Nazis were killed. You're thinking about it now. You're thinking about it. We're gonna ruminate on that one. We're gonna let that marinate a little bit. The Dead Nazi podcast.
Don't you
Well, I was
steal
gonna
my
say we
thunder,
could-
Francis.
We could go with the Juggalo podcast. I mean, we're really close on this one, and I think that would be like a fairly solid like target market.
Look, we could sit down and discuss ICP lyrics for fucking days and never really get to the end of it. Eat Monopoly
was the
and
Great Malenko truly great? In this TED Talk, I will.
he eats Monopoly and shits out Connect 4. Exactly what's the physiology of the insides of this man?
What is
that you do that immediately?
what is 2021 if not the Dark Carnival? In this essay for Vox, I will.
Joe, I had many ICP. I'm a fucking white kid in the Midwest. Of course, I listen.
It's
to
my
ICP.
cultural heritage.
Yeah,
I'll have you know.
I mean, look, you're at the Mecca, but when they started doing gatherings of the Juggalos, they had to come down to Missouri because everywhere else kicked them out, and we love freedom down here, and we're down with the clown.
Yeah, they couldn't follow rules like stop doing coke on stage and please don't set that on fire.
I mean, whomst among us? Let's be honest. I heard my 20s recently described as the Wheel of Mayhem, and frankly, I might be putting on some clown makeup. I might be becoming Joker-fied. I might even join the Dark Carnival. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, ICP are the original Joker-fied people. They're just way ahead of the curve.
Fuck.
I'm not becoming Joker-fied. I'm becoming Violent J-ified. I'll have you know.
Shaggy too dopified.
I have to frost my fucking tips for that one.
The new Patreon goal is just everyone gets a pair of Jenkos.
Blaze you dead homie-ified.
Oh God! There's no way he's still around. He was terrible.
I saw
half those guys only existed because ICP started a record label. Like, bullshit, we can't only employ ourselves.
Well, they brought along their friends. So they had. I heard Blaze You Dead Homie actually died, which is probably true.
Well,
Joe C
he was right.
died.
Blaze, he's dead.
Yeah. Who else? Cottonmouth Kings are still around, I guess. God,
Is
they
Twisted still around?
They got to be so old and still like now. It's
remember,
just
Cottonmouth elders.
I remember going to a Warped Tour in 2005, and I remember I was going to see the Suicide Machines on one stage, and Twisted was supposed to go on at the stage next door.
Forgot about them. God damn, they were bad. They were like ICP light.
Well, and so and I remember this primarily because for the first song of the of Suicide Machine set, they were just like, all right, you see those people over there? Charge them. And so the entirety of the whole crowd in front of Suicide Machines, just a solid wall of death, just all the way over, just trampling over the fucking Twisted fans. And yeah, that's about my only that's the closest I've come to a Juggalo experience.
your Juggalo encounter was was fucking crushing over some Twisted fans.
Yeah,
Juggalo encounters of the third kind. That's what that. And by the third kind, I mean you fight Twisted. That spelled with a Z.
Juggalo
Juggalo Encounter just sounds like the worst possible fucking amateur porn series.
The Juggalo porn exists. I mean, they had their own wrestling league once upon a time, back when they were jumping into the. I think they were in WCW at one point.
Okay, have you seen the Juggalo World Wrestling tapes though?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
That's of course I have, friends. That's a ridiculous question.
Is the Juggalo World Wrestling tapes? Is that just like you in your backyard with a trampoline?
No, it's Carrie.
Are you sure?
Carrie,
Above that.
Juggalo World Wrestling. Is that what it was called? I can't remember, but
I think it was Juggalo Championship Wrestling.
yes. No, there's these tapes of where they're just watching old WWF and providing their own commentary, and so, but it's like all the old Mick Foley stuff. So they're calling him Cactus Sack, and then they just like will have some Japanese wrestling. It's all this like old stuff from like the 90s, and it's like really grainy. And then you just have Jay and Shaggy doing insane commentary, like doing their own wrestling commentary, but making it up as they go along.
Have you ever seen Big Money Hustlers?
Yes.
What about Big Money Rustlers, the sequel, when they're cowboys?
All right, everybody. Thank you. You can follow me at Army Strength, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow the podcast, get on the YouTube, get on Twitter, get on wherever else. If you think that there's somewhere else we should be. I tried TikTok. It didn't work for me. I'm too old for TikTok. I just don't think about shooting videos. So don't ask me about that. Eventually, social media will pass us by, and we'll just be a bunch of old people on Twitter, just like old people are on Facebook. So hopefully y'all stick around for the ride. Anyway, talk to you next week.
Yeah, take care.